Now, a 16-year-old boy has died after being stabbed by a 14-year-old from a neighbouring school in Alexandra. The incident is said to have taken place at a house in the township on Thursday. Last month, a 15-year-old pupil was stabbed and killed at Pulosho Junior Secondary School. To unpack children's safety in schools, I'm joined now by Matakanye Matakanye from the National Association of School Governing Bodies, as well as Naptosa's Basil Manuel. Mr. Manuel and Mr. Matakanye, thank you very much for joining us. Now, firstly, every time this happens, I mean, I think it's within 2 weeks that another pupil is stabbed to death in the same township of Alexandra. And every time this happens, the question is, whose responsibility is it? And that's why I have a teachers' union and the SGB. So I'll start with you, Mr. Basil Manuel. Whose responsibility is it really to ensure that children are safe and that they are taught not to act this way?
Good morning, and thanks for having me, and good morning to Matakanye. First of all, let me say it's not as simple as to apportion the responsibility to one person or one group, because the children are the parents' children. They belong to the parents. They're placed in the care of the teachers. But of course, the education department plays a role too, because it is the provider of the service of education. So unless we are all working together and we are all singing from the proverbial same hymn book, we are not going to get to the place where we want to be. The weakness with the education department is the lack of counselors in our schools. Our children have problems. Our children live in a violent society. Our children think that violence is the answer to everything. Unless there are interventions there, we sit with a problem. Teachers need to know what to do and how to do it. Parents need to be involved. And so without this triumvirate of people, these three groups working together, we are not going to get on top of the solution.
Tata Matakanye, as the Association for School Governing Bodies, what have parents said to school governing bodies they want to do? Is it perhaps time to make sure that at least at schools, I know with the latest incident it happened at a private property and not the school, but in terms of attacks that happen against teachers or pupils against pupils at schools, is it perhaps time to introduce some law enforcement at schools, or is that going a bit too much?
Good morning once again, Masiho, and all your listeners. Firstly, we would like to send our deepest heartfelt condolences to the loss of the young life, to the family, to the teachers, to the learners, to the community. In this case, Masiho, it happened in the community. Now, firstly, we want to say I think the community must learn that they are very, very much important for the discipline of the young people. Now, if really they don't model correctly, then these young people will model the community. Then you see this thing happened in the community, in a house, somewhere. We don't know whether that house is where the young people entertain themselves. But if they entertain themselves in that house, how does that house reflect itself to the community in that area? So these are things that we have to look. But now, coming back, in the community, there are parents, and the school governing bodies are part and parcel of the parents. They are part and parcel of that particular community. So this must be taken back to the school level, where then we make laws and ensure that now those laws are taken care of. Not only the laws, but you'll remember, Masifu, that we want our schools to become safe. And we said, our schools to become safe, it is also the responsibility of the school governing bodies, because the law gives them the power to form committees. One of the important committees in the school is the School Safety Committee. And how do we look at that School Safety Committee? We are saying that Safe School Committee must have the parents, must have teachers, must have learners in the high school. It must have the police. It must have the community in the form of the CPF, then that community must start functioning properly because it has all sectors in the school and outside the school. And this is what we are. But now, we are lacking. Police are not really be seen in those communities. But also, as school government, we have to blame ourselves as school government because we don't form those communities, those committees, to ensure that our schools are safe. And this must be a lesson to us as school governing bodies to say that we must strengthen those committees to ensure that those committees apply the law and those committees are able to work with community, they are able to work with police so that we can report quickly if police are not in support.
All right, let me bring in.
There is a campaign.
Let me bring in Mr. Manuel just very quickly, Ntate Matakanye. Mr. Manuel, you know, this is clearly a multifaceted problem. The communities must be a part of it, the teachers, the schools, and as well as the parents. That's very important. And I remember a few years ago, there was that debate about bringing in metal detectors perhaps at schools. But kids use even scissors. Should we go back to discussing that again?
We've got to understand, I think, that there are these physical things that we can use like metal detectors, and they will have a limited impact. But as you so correctly say, we could find any instrument to use. What we've got to do is change attitudes. And Matakanye is right. Unless the parents are integrally involved and there are values being taught and reinforced in the schools by the teachers, as well as, of course, in terms of the community's outlook, we are not going to get to the bottom of this. One of the great weaknesses of our system is that we are normalizing violence. We are normalizing violence, gender-based violence. And here we see it again playing out, of course, in the reverse. But this poor girl's life has changed forever. This young man has lost his life and his parents have forever lost him. And this child has very, very little help from the broader community and even from the structures that exist. And that is where our weakness lies. Now, Naptosa is of the view that not all is lost. We have more good people than we have people that turn their backs on schools. And we've got to get to those people, get to the CPFs. We can't put a policeman in every school. We don't have such numbers of police. But we can teach the values that the police must uphold. And, of course, our teachers are 100% behind the idea that safe schools are schools where children learn. Schools are places of safety for the vast majority of our learners.
I'm just going to end with you, Ntate Matakanye, quickly, and I'll ask you to wrap it up a little bit quick for us. We've got Nicole Kente standing by for sports. But in terms of, the areas that are problematic, I mean, we cover most of what happens in terms of kids attacking each other or attacking teachers even at areas that are mostly areas that are considered poor. Should there be a special focus from the SGB Association to assist the school governing bodies in those areas to, for instance, establish those bodies that you were talking about that will ensure that the communities are brought in and kids and teachers feel safe at school?
I cannot agree more with Basil. I remember the minister, Kad Asman, once said, a school is a center of community life. So, and to realize that dream is that we have to work together. Community, school governing bodies, parents, police, Department of Basic Education. We must really start working. There must be nobody who lags behind, because if then the Department of Basic Education do not support schools, parents, communities will not take this seriously. I think we have got also local government must come into the play and ensure that now community own the school. I think this time that now these are called public schools, and it means exactly that these schools belong to this public, to this community. So communities must know how their children behave. They know how they behave themselves, because children are reflection of a community. If we behave well, then the school is going to behave well. If we behave badly, then these children are going to reflect that in the school. We know these things. So we just have to call upon communities where schools are. Please, these children are modeling you when they call them. These knives that they use in the school, the guns that they use in the school, they come from the community and they model you. But you know these people, and as a community, you don't stand up and say, not in our school, not in the name of this community. Then this is going to happen. So we'll strengthen the teachers, we'll strengthen the principals, we'll strengthen the school, we'll strengthen the school community by doing that. Nobody, and schools will become a safe haven if we can all stand up and do that. Thank you very much.